coverage of an African safari and may include animal kills and carcasses. Viewer discretion is advised.
It's dark and dingy this morning. We're on the lookout for lions, and this is Safari Live. Ready?
3, 2, 1. You are live, you are live.
Well, good morning everybody, and welcome to our sunrise safari this morning. My name is Tristan, and on camera today I've got my good friend Wiem. We are, like I was saying just now, going to be on the search for lions this morning. So we are going to go see if we can follow up on the Nkuhuma Pride and see if we can maybe find any sign of them in the western side of the reserve. I know Jamie had them yesterday morning around Arathusa Simambili area, so we're heading that way to go and have a look. Now, it is quite a dark and dingy morning this morning, so it will be perfect conditions for predators to be up and awake and moving. So hopefully we'll pick up some tracks. We did find some tracks earlier that we got a bit excited about, but then we realized that those are the tracks from yesterday, so left those alone and then carried on. Now, please remember this is an interactive safari, so it would be great to hear from you. Remember, you can get hold of us on #SafariLive, or you can send your questions through to questions@WildEarthTV. And like I say, even if you don't have any questions, it would be just great to hear from you and hear where you're watching from today. Now, I hope you all had a great day yesterday and enjoyed the last of the TV show. It sounded like it was a really good wrap up and a great way to finish, so I think everything was very successful with that, and so hopefully there'll be some more in the future. Now, I believe that this week, we're talking about TV shows, and Nat.Geo is Big Cat Week, so I think it's only fitting that we have a look around for the cats early this morning to see what we can find and try and kind of kick it off and run a similar theme to them. But it's amazing how different everything looks since Friday when I left. That was prior to most of the rain falling, although I suppose we did get quite a bit on Thursday. But everything looks very green again, and the grass is all lushed up and all the little pans are full. Unfortunately, not as much frog activity though. On Friday morning we had such an incredible drive with all of our frogs wrestling, and Jamie had those bullfrogs fighting and carrying on, so it was really quite an interesting morning to be out on Friday morning. But this morning I've driven past a few little puddles and not nearly as much activity. I think everybody is tired after a feverish weekend of fighting and mating. So it's a very interesting weather system at the moment. We thought once sort of the storm Djuma had passed us that we would have been in a situation where we would have started to get some nice, warm, clear weather. But unfortunately that's not happened. It's still quite dark, like I say, and lots of cloud cover. It's quite cool this morning as well. A little bit of rain. It kind of feels like there's rain on the air. So I wonder if there's not another system developing. Jamie was actually saying to me this morning that she was watching the cloud and the wind patterns on one of the weather channels where we've been following the storm, and she was saying that it looks like there's a kind of another system that's developing, not nearly as strong as what Djuma was, but there's still some cloud cover that's blowing in and giving us this cooler weather. So Lou is reminding me that the weather is about 22 degrees of 71 Fahrenheit, so quite a bit cooler than we normally experience, or what we have been experiencing the last few weeks. It's generally quite warm in the mornings, and this morning you can see we've got jerseys on, and there's a very cool breeze blowing. It will also be to do with all the moisture that's around at the moment. There's a lot of moisture in the ground, and that will be causing the wind to cool down a little bit as well. Alright, so we're going to carry on our search for the Nkuhumas, and while we do that, let's go and meet Jamie, who's also out here this morning.
Good morning and welcome to the Sunrise Safari, or at least the official start to the Sunrise Safari. My name is Jamie, and this morning I have the wonderful Brian on camera with me. The thumbs I see all dressed for work. the morning attire of the thumb. And this morning we actually don't really have a plan. I've come trundling around Treehouse Dam just to see if my spotted hyena friends have come to taunt me, show me a flash of their bottoms and then disappear. I'm talking about the hyena clan of Djuma. I don't see a hyena there, Brian. I don't see anything there, Brian. No. Lots of water though. We've had some good rain. Yesterday was nice rain. Admittedly, slightly the wrong weather for our Hawaiian themed rap party. It was decidedly odd. All of us dressed in Hawaiian skirts and freezing in the rain. It was a little bit odd. But nevertheless, I thought I'd just take a trip around here, find hyenas. It was going to be easy. I was going to follow them to a den. There is not a single hyena here. That's okay. After that, we're going to go and check Gwens' den. Then we're going to go all the way to the east, Brian.
Oh, wonderful.
Wonderful. We're going to go all the way to the east and see what we can spot there. And don't forget, send through your questions on hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or through to questions@WildEarthTV. Let us see what wonderful conversations we can get going first thing in the morning. I see some zebra tracks, which is unusual. This is bizarre. Ah, Joshua says the thumb is looking very professional today. I'm sorry, I had to process that for a second because I thought Louise said the sun. Did you also think that? I just heard the sun is looking very professional. I say, what sun? It's not looking professional at all. It's late. It's sleeping in this morning. Blanketed behind its clouds. Sorry, Joshua. I was vaguely confused. I'm glad Brian was on the same page, though. The sun's looking mighty professional. Pardon? But yes, the thumb is always professional first thing in the morning. I have never seen the thumb unclothed. Well, that's a complete lie. But on drive, I've never seen the thumb unclothed. There's not a single hyena track. Not one. It's totally weird. They've been everywhere every morning in this area, and now it's like they don't know. There is one set of tracks. Okay, that makes me feel a bit better. Morning, Tristan checking western edge of Djuma, see whether the Nkumas have crossed back. Going along Weaver's Nest. I'm going to see if I can follow up on Karula. It's very cross. And then it depends on whether or not it's a morning like this morning or a bright and sunny morning. So a lot of the animals on mornings like this morning will hide away. They'll stay lying down for a little bit longer, waiting for the warmth of the day. And of course, because it's dark, they don't want to start moving until they can see. But wild dogs, cheetah, they tend to get up at the crack of dawn. As soon as it's light enough for them to move around, they start to head out hunting. So it's a difficult one because there's never really an exact changing of the guards, which would be, I suppose it would be a bit weird if there was. Imagine if all of the nocturnal animals just went chunk, lights out, daytime animals up. Dwarf mongoose tend to be the latest risers. Dwarf mongoose love a lion on a cloudy day. Alrighty. Seems as though all of the animals are having a lion, Brian. No hyena. The elephants were busy last night. They put stuff all over the roads. Oh, speaking of. That was unintentional. Good morning. Are you the gentleman that's responsible for all of the muck all over the roads? Oh, not gentleman. My apologies. Hello, elephants. That's nice. What a nice surprise. Exactly where I left you yesterday morning. I wonder if it's the same herd of elephants. Trees everywhere. Hello, Mommy. It's okay. Just stop here. Give him plenty of space since little one wants to suckle. Oh, how sweet is this? What a lovely way to start off our morning. I love the way they tuck their trunks up like that when they feed. The little one. And I also love the sort of patient, tolerant look the mothers get when they feed their calves like this. They just stop dead still and stand and wait. It's been really nice to see elephant herds again. I felt as though we went through a period where they were quite absent. Hello, Mum. Okay, Mum. All right, Mum. I'm just sitting. Just sitting. Hello, big girl. Hi, big girl. It's all right. It's okay. Hello, big girl. That was half just letting us know not to come any closer, and also half gravity. So the way that she walked down that hill caused that head bob and the slight increase in speed. And it can be a little bit deceptive when you're sitting with elephants, because if you're not quite sure, you could actually interpret that as, whoops, time to go. And I think it was just, she just really wanted that patch of grass, Brian. Hey, big girl. Good morning. We're just sitting. She's got quite short tusks. Oh! I wonder whatever happened to Benjamin Button. Benjamin was a baby elephant with the wrinkliest forehead we've ever seen in our entire lives. Much wrinklier than this little one. Yes, your forehead's lovely. And Benjamin was such a little character. I'm sure he's around somewhere. I just haven't seen him in a long time. That was utterly hilarious. Throwing grass over its shoulder. And the little one at the back doing the same thing. Oh, goodness, sorry. Hold on a moment. Let me just turn that down. White Lady Eowyn, you want to know how long elephant cows are fertile? It's a very good question. I think I actually researched this once, and I think they stay fertile throughout their lives, but obviously the chances of a successful pregnancy... Hello, girl. Okay. All right. Hey, big girl. You're in a funny mood this morning. Hey. What's up? Sorry, White Lady Eowyn. As far as I know, they don't actually go through menopause like human beings go through menopause, the same as with the big cats. But obviously their chances of producing viable eggs are relatively slim as they get older. So when an elephant starts to hit sort of 50 or so, they're on their final set of teeth, which means their bodies aren't getting the same nutrients because their teeth have worn down, they can't chew in the same way. And so the chances of them falling pregnant become smaller and smaller. I really want to cough, but I think with her funny mood, I'd better hold it. Sweeping the dirt off the plants. I love watching them do that. It's such a smooth, coordinated motion. What is this little nonsense doing at the back, Brian? He's having so much fun with that blade, with the pieces of grass. Trying to perfect the beating motion, but not quite getting it 100% correct. Hasn't perfected it in quite the same way Mom has. What are you doing? I'm going to sit here because I don't actually have any other option other than to sit here. In the meantime, Tristan has managed to do exactly what I wanted to do and found a hyena.
Indeed we have, Jamie. Very fortunate to have just come down the road and found this one busy staring off into the distance. So there has been so much hyena activity of late on Djuma, and it's really difficult to kind of work out what they're doing and where they're going. I think at the moment all the clan is back and they're busy looking around and just checking if there's no other hyenas that have arrived, and then potentially looking for den sites. Now this particular hyena, you can see its belly is quite full, so it's not pregnant, I don't think. There's no sort of droop to the lower end of the belly. It's just very fat, so it's obviously found some meal last night and had a really, really good feed. But I'm sure that they are looking around every road we drive on at the moment. There's hyena tracks everywhere. They're checking all over on termitariums, looking for any place to dig out. I just want to quickly sneak forward just because it keeps looking in that direction behind the bush, and we obviously can't see behind the bush, so I just want to try and go that way and just see what it's looking at. Now, because it's got a full belly, in all likelihood there might be something around. It doesn't look like there's any blood on that face itself, but it is possible that maybe there's something here that it's stolen a carcass from. You never know. Sometimes there'll be a leopard lying around. There is a big water pan here, so it could also just be coming for a drink. Yeah. But this looks like one of the younger members of the clan. Those of you who are in the know with the clan, maybe you can give us an idea as to who this is. But it looks like one of the younger ones. The ears are still perfectly intact. There's no sort of signs of scarring around the head. She looks in great condition at the moment. So it is a very happy hyena, but you can see very alert to what's going on. So that's why I wanted to check, because generally hyenas this time of the day are still moving around looking for any signs of food or going to reunite with the clan and back to the den site. And this particular one is very, very, very alert as to what's going on around it. So I wonder if there's not something that it bumped into recently. But there you can see that belly. Look how full it is. Had a really good feed last night. There we go, crossing the road, and you can see the nose is down, so she's sniffing, looking for any signs of others. So, Michael, you're wondering what dictates hyena moving dens and when do they decide to do so? Well, generally, how it works is that there'll potentially be some sort of issue where they are currently denning. So sometimes it'll be if the den has been utilized for too long and it's now become dirty and filthy and the young ones have defecated and urinated inside there and it's become a bit of a mess. Also, hyenas will bring back bits of carcasses, so you end up with bits of bone everywhere and it becomes quite filthy. And so they often move because of that. Then the other side of it is there could be pressure that's around wherever they were denning. So maybe there's an increase in lion activity, increase in other hyenas, and they've decided that they're now going to move on to try and find a safer area for their young ones to grow up. And so that's what they do. And when they establish a den, basically they go around for a while and they'll check all termite mounds that they come across. There'll be some that they've already used previously that they'll go to first, and they go and check if they can excavate that out and just prepare it for denning, or they'll go and find themselves a new one. And what they're generally looking for is a termite mound that's in an area that's slightly raised, that they can see what's going on around them, and that is quite large, that they can excavate a big enough space for them to have their young ones and for the young ones to be able to grow inside there. Ultimately, they can't choose a small little termite mound, because as the young ones get bigger, they're going to outgrow it too quickly. So they tend to try and find slightly bigger ones. So not going to go too close, because it seems that she's going to trot away. And you can see that incredible gait that they have, the way that they bounce along. So Joshua, the male's role within the clan. Well, the males are still vitally important to the clan, even though they are submissive to the females and the females kind of dictate what goes on. The males are important in obviously breeding, so they help with the mating and trying to get the clan to grow in terms of numbers, but they also are a part of the hunting process should the clan want to hunt, and the feeding process, as well as protecting of that territory. So they'll play a part in checking and making sure that there's no other hyenas that are coming in and no other males that could potentially oust them and cause any sort of harm to the rest of the clan, and particularly the young ones. So much like most males, they try and keep other males away so that the young ones are safer. Now, you saw how this hyena just turned around and came back towards the grass and has walked through the grass. Now, what's probably happened there is this will be an area where they'll scent mark. Hyenas like to scent mark on roads, and so in all likelihood another hyena has come along. There we go, you can see it's rolling. So I'm pretty sure another hyena has scent marked here already, and they often do what's called pasting. So they'll walk over the grass and they have a little gland underneath their tail that secretes a paste that tells every other hyena that walks past here who they are and what their role is within the clan. Oh, and off we go. Well, somebody got it all this morning. They're very sprightly. So let's go and see where it's gone off to. I don't think it's being chased by anything. I think it's just a little bit of energy in this cool weather. But that was very funny. So it would have deposited a lot of scent there through the glands on its face by rolling around. And like I say, in all likelihood, I'm sure that hyena did a pasting as well. Alright, so we're going to try see if we can relocate our hyena and see where our hyena is gone. And while we do that, there is one other member that is out here this morning, and that is James on his bushwalk.
Good morning, everybody. If you have not met me before, my name is James Hendry, and I am on bushwalk this morning with Craig, the Maltese root canal. He is back from his leave. Very nice to have you back, Craig. He looks like he might have nodded were he not concentrating so hard on being a cameraman. Right, hashtag Safari Live is how you get hold of us. Otherwise, questions at WildEarthTV is back in vogue as we're not on TV anymore. And so that's how you can talk to us. We are as live as Jamie and Tristan. And yes,
low, almost inaudible, to me at least, rumble from another herd of elephants that's just behind us. And the response... Are you full of nonsense? Look at you. The response came from the two adult females in this herd, and this deep rumble was emanating from both of them. I mean, it's incredible to think that we can sit... I'm not allowed to say the word incredible, but I'll say it anyway. Incredible that we're able to sit and listen to elephants talking to each other. I just wish we knew what they were saying. I wonder what it was. Good morning. Did you hear the news? Did you survive the night? Do you want some coffee? I'd love to know what they were saying to each other. There's a great marula tree here. Stay away from my marula tree. That's my marula tree. Oh, I overindulged in marulas and now I've got a headache. Who knows what they say to each other? But I would love to know. When we sat with them, they came right up to us. And that's why Brian and myself had to kind of sit still. We couldn't really turn around or shift around. Where's Big Mom? Let me go forward just a tad. Which way are you lot going? Hey, Mom. One of them's very, very pregnant as well. That's special. These moments are very special. Let me try and... Let's just settle here for now. Wait for them to come across. I don't want to, since they've already come right up close to us, I actually don't want to push into their space at all. It's always better to let the animals come to you. They just tend to be more comfortable, they're more relaxed, they're more likely to behave in their natural way, rather than, apart from the fact that it's rude, they've got their personal space as well. Okay, except that we can't really properly see her. There's two adult females that I've seen in this herd. And William, you want to know how old the mother is. There are two of them. One is much, much older than the other. I mean, I'm not an expert. I can't give you an exact age. But I would say that the one is around in her mid-20s. The other is probably closer to 40. The matriarch of this herd. She was the one that, when there was rumbles coming from the west, she was the one that started to respond. And started to call back, and then she was followed by the other adult, the female that we were with originally. As elephants get older, they start to become more and more sort of sunken around their temporal region. So as they get older, obviously their skin loses elasticity, they lose subcutaneous fat, and it just makes these indents around their temporal, between sort of the tops of their eyes and the tops of their heads. There we go. And as they age, that gets more and more evident. And when you see a really old elephant, it's almost as though their skin is paper thin, if that makes any sense. Just like an older human. It's sort of across their bones. And you can see it in the way that it's sunken around their hips, around their spines. And this is still a relatively young elephant. Now bear in mind, for all of our new viewers, you absolutely cannot age an elephant by its tusks, and that's because, much like human beings, tusks are unique to the elephant concerned. She's broken hers, so she's broken off the tip of the right tusk. It might even have been a crack already. It might have been a fault in the way that the tusk grew. But some elephants have big tusks, some elephants have small tusks. And generally, the only way you can really use tusks to age elephants is when you're looking at an older bull, because around 40 they go through sort of burst in the growth of ivory. But other than that, tusks are definitely not a right way of aging an elephant. My dear, your little just across the road, and I feel like if I try and go beside the upstairs, we definitely can't go closer then, Brian. I have to go back a little bit. Unfortunately, a tad. Sort that out. It's
Well, welcome back, guys. I think Jamie's unfortunately just gone through a little bad signal area. I'm sure it will get back up and running shortly. We're still on our search for the lions. Unfortunately, our hyena dashed off into the bush and was gone and into the thickets, so I didn't pursue there. I did go and look, because we weren't too far from an old den that they used. We just quickly went and poked our nose in and just tried to see if we could find any sign that they were active around that den, and unfortunately no signs. It doesn't look like they've been there at all. The den itself the termite mound has got lots of grass growing on it, and there's no very definitive pathways that are coming out of there. So we decided to carry on and see now if there's any sign of the Nkahuma pride coming back onto Djuma. So we're just on the western edge now, and we're slowly kind of just checking along as we go. Now, there was a very beautiful bird that was on the road, which has now flown away, unfortunately, as they do. I think there's still one there. I'm just going to try to see if I can edge around this corner a little bit. So it was an African Hoopoe that was in the road, and they're beautiful. They've got these beautiful crests. We have actually quite a nice bird party here. You can see there's a grey hornbill there, and behind it there's the Hoopoe coming out, just on the edge there. There it is, the two of them. And aren't they beautiful with their crests? I love the way they get that crest up and almost look like mad professors as they bounce around. And then there's a sparrow as well. Lots of birds around. Now I wonder if there isn't something that's busy crawling around that they're after. You often find in overcast conditions like this that you'll sometimes get termites that will be out and still feeding. So the termites come out at night and they move around and they excavate and they build, because there's far less threat at night than there is during the day. And in these cooler overcast conditions, it's still a bit dark, that they get caught out a little bit, and the birds then come down and make hay while the sun is shining, so to speak, and try and grab as many as they can. So that's probably why we're seeing so many different bird species on the road itself. That's what they're after. But nice to see. We do still have our bird list. Now I know I've seen these ones already on my bird list, so all of the ones that we had here. Be good to have an update on that. I'm sure Brent is miles ahead after this weekend, so there's going to be lots of catching up to do. I know yesterday he was bragging in my ear that he was way ahead of me, so we'll have to do something about that over the next few days and try and get the situation rectified and make it a contest again. But it's amazing to see. Often you'll find this where you get one or two birds, then a whole group of them all come together. They all attract one another. When they see birds feverishly feeding, they'll find that all the other birds will try and come into the area to try and utilize whatever that particular bird has found. So generally in these groupings of birds, you'll always find drongos in there, and the southern black tit would also be one that would often be inside there. The southern black tit loves to be a part of groups of birds, and they're generally the center of attention in those. Now, birds should be actually quite good this morning, given that it's quite cool and overcast. A lot of them, or particularly the big birds, will still be down on the trees. They're not going to be having any thermals to ride at this stage, and so I'm pretty sure they're going to be down on trees, and so we should get some sightings of them. And then the other birds will, like I say, be making use of the cooler weather to try and fly around and get as much food as possible, in the hope that there'll be lots of insect activity after the rains. So I'm sure it'll be a good day to be a bird, that's for sure, and good for us, like I say, to make some catching up on Brent's list. I don't know, Nev from Australia, if you're watching and you can give us an update. Nev is one of our viewers that's been watching and been compiling the lists so that we can see who's going where and who's got what. And like I say, Brent unfortunately is streets ahead at this stage. Now I was hoping to come onto this beautiful open area and find a whole bunch of lions lying here. That would have been in an ideal world. Unfortunately not today. Still haven't seen any tracks for them. I know Jamie left them a little bit further north, but it's always worth checking along these areas. The Nkahuma pride traverses all of this. They move around in all these sections, so it's worth checking all these little open areas. It's a great place for them to rest up if they've been hunting during the night and they're just looking for a good place to lie down. These more open sections is what they like to lie in. Ken the Scot. Well, you want to know whether the new bush growth in the bush is going to make it more difficult to find and track animals. Well, Ken, it does make it a little harder. What happens is, with the bush getting thicker, spotting of animals becomes a little bit more difficult. You must remember that a lot of these animals are perfectly designed to camouflage, because either they're a prey animal and they're going to be hunted, or they are a predator that needs to hunt themselves. So they can't be out here and be very visible, because otherwise they're never going to survive. So they blend in really well, and once the grass gets really long, it becomes almost impossible to see some of these cats. Last week we had a cheetah, and the cheetah went into very long grass, and you actually couldn't see the cheetah at all. It was just a blanket of grass, and in that grass was the cheetah, even though it was standing up and walking. So if you had come past there at that moment in time, you would not have known that that cheetah was there. So it makes it a little bit harder to spot things. In terms of tracking, the rain can be a good thing if the rain is fresh. So if you have rain now and it just washes these roads, then everything becomes very smooth, and it kind of cleans the roads out, and then any tracks that you see after that, you know you've got a really good timeline to establish how fresh they are. But now, once it starts to get a little bit harder and dry out, then the roads become very difficult to see tracks on. They become very hard, and even when the animals stand on it, there's almost no sign that they were there. So it can be a little bit tougher, but luckily we're in an area with a really good density of animals, so we're able to still pick up on the things that we are looking for. Alright, so we're going to carry on our search for these lions, and while we do that, we're going to go to another Scot, James, on his bushwalk.
Okay, and that does it. Right, everybody, you may have heard me just talking to Herbert there. He's found something interesting. We will go and have a look now. There are a number of caterpillars over here. Here are some big ones, obviously much more mature and much closer to becoming pupa than these little ones over here. And I think these look like processionary worms. I don't know that they are, though, because I think they're on the wrong kind of tree. Anyway, that's what those are. And what's interesting to me is that they take a lot longer than expected to become adults. Now, if you've been watching the TV shows, you know that I was keeping one of the caterpillars that is on this plant here, this Waltheria plant. I'll just break off the stalk and put it back just now. There is a caterpillar of, we think, the dancing acria. And this caterpillar, during the course of the 8-week TV show, well, they went from
Well, welcome back, guys. So we're still busy searching. I believe now James has had a little issue as well. So often with this cloudy weather, the gremlins like to creep in and play havoc with our signal. So it does happen. And now we should be making our way now. We're going slowly northwards, and there's an area here that the Nkuhumas often like to cross in under the power lines that you can see running in front of us here. This is an area that they move around in quite a bit, and in fact yesterday this is where they walked. So just going to see if maybe they've come back on their own tracks and decided to follow those back in. They also like to move northwards to a big dam that's north of us, so we are going to go and check there as well. But other than the hyena, it's been relatively quiet this morning. There's not been too many impalas around, or kudu, or any of our general antelope. So I think everybody's having a bed day. It's that kind of weather, that overcast, grey day, which is perfect for having some time in bed. You can see here where they walked yesterday, there's some tracks that have been driven over. It's not very clear, but there was some there. Nothing coming back so far. The nice thing about this pride of lions is that they're quite big now, so because there's the 3 females and all the cubs together, they leave quite a few signs to follow, so it makes it a little bit easier with them. They're a big group, And so if they do go anywhere near the road, we will find it. Oh, there's a piece of a vehicle. Just going to quickly grab that. I think somebody's lost their sump cover by the looks of it. So we're not going to leave that lying out in the bush. Let's quickly go and grab that. So I think somebody obviously came over this bump and their sump cover was a little bit loose and it caught on the little bump here and it pulled it off, unfortunately for them. Alright, so I believe James has managed to find signal and clean out his gremlins, so let's go back to him and see what he's busy with.
Now hold on.
These ones, even if you don't have oil.
We are live, sorry everybody. I'm just getting an cooking instruction from Herbie on how to cook these things, which I'm not going to do. I'm just trying to move it into position. Here is a beautiful jewel beetle. And this is the giant jewel beetle that lives on the acacia trees. Isn't he lovely? He's also about 1.5 inches long. Now, I'm sorry about my caterpillar story being sort of ruined by a gremlin, but as I was saying, they seem to take at least 8 to 10 weeks, perhaps, to make a cocoon. And so we'll watch them over the next few weeks and see what happens. But this jewel beetle is a rather magnificent fellow. And a little bit like the caterpillar, started off as a worm. And has matured. Sorry, there's rather vicious thorns on this black monkey thorn. And matured into a rather spectacular thing. And there are quite a few of them. Well, there are at least 2 of them on this tree. And Herbert's pointing out more. He says 3 or 4. That's wonderful. Here's another one here. Totally harmless to human beings and apparently very good to eat if fried up in a little bit of oil. And Herbie says when he was a kid they used to go around collecting these jewel beetles. Probably while they were supposed to be herding the cattle. Right, Herbie? Yes, so while they were being... while they were neglecting their duties of cattle herding, they were collecting jewel beetles and then frying them up, probably over a little open fire, and eating them. Which, of course, is what you should do if you live in the bush and you're hungry. Then, one of the things they absolutely certainly didn't eat was the beans or little red seeds that come out of these pods. So this is the pod of a lucky bean tree, and I forget consistently what it is in Latin. I think it's Abrus reflexor or something like that. It probably isn't. There's something like that. It begins with an A, the genus. And what's in it are these bright red seeds that are highly toxic. There you go. Highly toxic to human beings. And they go much harder than that when they are ripe. And they sit on the ground bright red as a warning, in the same way that many of the animals out here, or many of the small invertebrates, are red and black to warn off predators. So are these beans. And that's what that's saying. So we wouldn't want to eat one of those. But apparently, if you want to be lucky, and one of the reasons it's called a lucky bean tree, is that you dig up the root, Herbie says, and then you crush it up and you put it in your bath water and then you bathe in it and you will become lucky. I might try that this evening, although finding a bath to put it in might be a bit difficult. Perhaps a bucket. Good. Let's have one last look at the jewel beetle. And apparently there is one bath in Alex's room, of course, at Inga's. I don't think I'm going to ask the Russian if I can have a lucky bean bath in his bath, though. I think he'd be slightly offended. Certainly I would. Isn't this beetle quite astounding? It's at rest because it's too cold for it to move around too much. Megan, you say, what is my favourite edible plant? Well, I think the answer to that is easy. That is a marula fruit. The marula fruits out here are by far and away the most delicious thing you can find underground, or at least above ground. Then I'd probably go with something called, which I haven't found the English name for, called Shinkondlo, which is very nice, and it grows underneath marula fruits, at least marula trees. But I've actually yet to find, only been shown the plant once, I've only eaten it once, and Rexon has yet to find me another one. He found it. It's called Shinkondlo, and it's a little sort of, it's like a sweet, very nice tasting carrot. I don't particularly like the taste of carrots, but you can pull up this root, wash it off, and it's very sweet. It's almost like a sugary, perhaps it's like a sugar beet actually, and that's very delicious. So that would be my second favorite. And otherwise, there's not a huge amount out here that tastes very good unless it's cooked in some quite nice things. So that's the story with eating breakfast out here. We're going to continue along here. We've got no tracks of anything yet. Our plan is to head towards the hyena dens to see if they have been perhaps reoccupied. Jamie was in the south last time I spoke of her. I'm not sure which part of the cardinal points she's pointing to now.
Still south, trying to get around a herd of elephants that has been blocking the road. My plan is very similar to James's. I'm on my way towards the hyena den because I've heard an interesting report from one of the other vehicles. They say that there is a warthog in the den site itself, but it hasn't moved. And the question is whether or not it is in fact a live warthog or a not so live warthog. Because if it's a live warthog, Gwen's gone. She's moved. And so the mystery of the hyena clan deepens, and the hyena den sites. I know James is searching for active ones closer to camp because there's been so much hyena activity. Well, there was so much hyena activity. Tracks everywhere, moving up and down. I'm going to go and just investigate and see what's happening at Gwen's den. But to do that, I had to go all the way around a herd of elephants. They were not Tuesday morning traffic jam. And we're not going anywhere. Much like James, their favourite fruit is also marulas, their favourite edible plant. Which I think is one of the reasons why we're seeing them back again. There's definitely no hyena tracks here. This is the road that James and Herbie found one potential den site where they had a hyena resting in a termite mound. There's not a single hyena track on here. So I think it's safe to say that they're not using any den sites this side. Oh, they've kept us truly guessing. Excuse me. Sorry everybody, I'm seriously struggling. There's obviously something in my bed that is making me sneeze every single morning that I wake up. I'm going to try and figure out what it is. Our consulting detective, you want to know, do hyena cubs stay within their clan for the rest of their lives? Occasionally. So hyena clans aren't as stable as something like a lion pride. Sometimes when they get big, they split off into separate clans. Excuse me. Oh, so much talking happening. So some males will stay in the clan, quite males, and then some will go off and become nomadic. It depends on their potential for mating opportunities. The females will generally stay within the clan, but again, as I said, there might be a split or a schism or a fight between the various lines, because unlike lion prides, hyenas are not all related to each other in one clan. So you've got some that are part of one family line, some that are part of another family line, and so on. So obviously the bonds within the families are slightly tighter. So you'll sometimes get a split along those lines. Oh goodness, sorry. Oh. I'm going to go make my way towards a potential home of our hyenas. Let's go and find James with a feathered home.
Well, what we're doing here is very carefully actually not watching what you're looking at here. I'm watching Craig and his aerial, because if Craig manages to hit this tree with his aerial by mistake, what's going to happen is that there's going to be a lot of swearing, quite a lot of running, and then hopefully not more swearing when the wasps catch up with us. And the situation we have here is a paper wasp nest next to a waxbill's nest. And as Herbert says, the great mystery is, how is it that a bird and an insect have come to have a symbiotic relationship? How on earth do they communicate with each other to know where to plant each other's nest? And I said, well, I must be because the bird is cleverer than the wasp. It finds the wasp's nest and then builds its nest around there. And Herbert said, no, he's often seen the bird's nest first, and then the wasps arrive and start to build their nest. So the situation is, of course, that there is the symbiosis, or it's probably not a symbiosis, it might be. We don't know what benefit the wasps derive from the bird, but we do know that, of course, the birds derive a huge security sort of benefit from having those nasty wasps next to them. Now, I don't know if you've ever been stung by a wasp like that. It might be termed a hornet. It's very unpleasant indeed, and they sting en masse, and they sting repeatedly. And I've told this story before some time back, but I've been stung by exactly a nest of wasps like that. And I was on the golf course, obviously not on the fairway, because I'm never on the fairway on the golf course, and I was trying to find my ball underneath some thick bush, and I got my head underneath it, and my hat wasn't on. Suddenly I felt like pool acid had been poured onto my head. All I heard was vzz, and then it felt like pool acid had been poured onto my head, and these things had just nailed me probably 5 or 6 times each, and I was hit 50 times at least. I ran out of there, left the ball behind and my 4-iron, and sort of was running around squealing like a small child because it was so very painful. Luckily it dissipated pretty quickly. Within 20 minutes I couldn't feel it anymore, and I'm not allergic to them, so I was quite lucky. But certainly the language that came out of my mouth was fairly choice, and very unmanly was the tone at which I squealed. So they make a huge, they're a very effective security mechanism if you can make them not sting you. And somehow the waxbill and the wasp have come to an understanding where they live with each other, and the wasp provides security. I don't know what the waxbill provides for the wasps, but you would imagine it's something if, what was that? You would imagine it's something if the bird arrives first and the wasp afterwards. Herbert, would you like to contribute to that discussion? What would you like to say? Let me come closer to you.
Good morning, everybody. Through our investigation on this symbiotic relationship, we have found that when the bird's eggs hatch, if the bird lays 4 eggs, one will be left in the nest for the wasp to feed on. So what happens, that the 4th egg will be a negative egg, and as soon as the chicks are hatched, the last one will be cracked open, and the bird will take the chicks out, and the wasp will get inside the nest and feed on the...
And eat the yolk?
Yeah.
Really? Well, there we are then. That's probably the answer to the great mystery. Isn't that wonderful? How they communicate with each other, no one has any idea. That's a wonderful story. Thank you for that, Herbert. Herbert, you can see, ran away there for some reason. I think he finds the thought of himself on camera rather amusing. We had a very good question coming through. I'm afraid I forgot it on the end of listening to Herbert's fascinating story there. Miss Sky, you say, will the birds eat the wasps? No, I don't think they will. They are seed eaters, the waxbills, and yes, they will eat insects from time to time, but a waxbill is tiny. A waxbill is about that big, and the wasp is about half its size. So no, I don't think they'll eat those things. I think that if they were to be stung by them, it would be pretty painful indeed if they got through the feathers. So I don't think there would be any wasp eating. And continue down this little way. And Katie, a very good question from you is, what other animals have we found hanging out with each other? Katie, you know, there are not that many that do that sort of thing, but there are a lot of things that hang out with each other and communicate in ways that we don't necessarily understand. They might be very simple ways, but we don't know what they are necessarily. Baboons and impala, I think, is quite an unlikely one, because big male baboons will eat young impala if they can catch them. But they do tend to spend a lot of time. You'll often find, in fact, you'll very seldom find a baboon troop that is foraging in the grass and in the trees slowly. So foraging, I don't mean moving from one place to another, but actually foraging. You'll very seldom find a baboon troop that isn't attended by a herd of impala. Because there's so many more impala than there are baboons, you often find impala without baboons, but seldom the other way around if there's foraging going on. So that's an unusual one. I don't know why or how that happens. And then we have things like, what's the other one I was thinking of? Hornbills and mongoose. They spend a lot of time with each other. I mean, a very big yellow-billed hornbill might eat a very baby mongoose. That could happen. But they tend to spend quite a lot of time foraging with each other, and there's a symbiotic relationship of the hornbills providing some kind of security detail, we think. And then the mongoose, of course, they scrabble away and dig in termite mounds and turn logs over and that sort of thing, and therefore reveal things that the hornbills might like to eat. So that's two interesting ones that happen out here. There are many more, of course. Let's head across to Tristan, find out what he is doing at the moment. I'm not sure what he's tracking. It seems to be a very quiet morning indeed, so maybe he'll just tell you a nice story.
Well, we are trying to find some tracks for these Nkahuma lions. So we're now right on our boundary with Simamili, just checking in case they've come out here. So far, nothing that we can see that's fresh or from last night. So it is quite quiet at this stage. Stories-wise, I suppose we've got a few. I'm sure we can delve into some. Just chatting about the kind of cooperation between animals and unusual relationships. I believe James mentioned baboons and impalas, and we saw that last week with the cheetah, when the baboons and impalas were all walking together, and that cheetah went after the impalas, and the baboons then came and chased the cheetah away when it tried to chase the impalas. Sorry, I just see some tracks here, so I just want to have a little look quickly. It's just where some guys were looking at tracks from, not yesterday, the day before. The tracks are almost washed away with the rain that we had yesterday, so those are not any good to us. They're not very fresh. Now there's a little pathway coming up that these lions often like to use when they come out of Simamili, so that's why I'm here. When I used to work at Simamili, this is the exact same place we always used to check for them coming in, so it's a great place to look to see if they've come out again. They like to use this pathway quite a bit. But no sign today. Doesn't look like they've come out there. So there's a little pan that they like to hang around quite a bit, and that's why they use this pathway. This pathway leads directly to that pan. Alright, so while we carry on, let's go to Jamie, who I believe has got a warthog in Gwen's den.
A very much alive warthog, despite what I was led to believe. This warthog is full of the joys of spring. Ears out, blinking eyes. It's absolutely fine. It's just having a lie-in this morning. Remember how we spoke about animals waking up, and on cool, cloudy mornings they like to have a lazy start to their day? Well, I think this warthog is just having a lazy start to his. But it does give us a really lovely opportunity to examine him. They don't often sit still for this long, do they, Brian? No. This is amazing. Well, I mean, it's amazing. It's also quite sad, because it means that Gwen has moved. And I don't know how on earth we're going to find her again, unless she moves to a den with the rest of the clan. Did you boot the hyena out, mister? This is an impressive warthog. He's no spring chicken. You can see from the sort of wear and tear on his tusks and the massive size of those warts, in inverted commas, on his face. Gosh, I don't think I've ever had an opportunity to examine a warthog like this. I hope he's okay. And there's not something wrong with him.
I think he's just being lazy.
Brian thinks he's just being lazy. I think you're right, Brian. Brian and I were just discussing how comfortable it must be to have a lion this morning. Isn't that sweet? This is really truly impressive. So the warts on his face are not warts at all, obviously, and what distinguishes male from female is the fact that he has 2 sets, and also you'll never see warts this prominent on a female. And only the males really have the ones that stick out this far to the side, and that's because they're used for defense. So when they fight each other, it's a way of protecting the more sensitive areas, particularly the eyes. And they do fight when warthog rutting season comes along. This is incredible. Wow. I don't think I've ever sat this long with a warthog that isn't a garden warthog. While we watch our warthog having a lazy Tuesday morning lion, Shamson, you want to know what warthogs eat? Plants, mainly. So despite what the Lion King might have led you to believe, in terms of Pumbaa eating all sorts of bugs and grubs, that makes up very little of their diet. Most of it is roots and shoots and leaves. That sounds like a book on grammar. Roots, shoots, leaves, and occasionally tubers that they can dig up. They go down onto their hocks and they dig through. Sorry, struggling a little bit. What was I going to say about warthogs? Oh, they can be quite omnivorous. So they are herbivores, but every now and again they will chew or scavenge off carcasses. So you could find one potentially eating meat, which is an odd thought, but most of the herbivores out here will actually do that, antelope and warthog alike. He's so comfortable in his hole. This is amazing. This is a rare opportunity, everybody. We don't often get to closely examine warthog like this. I think I might need to take an antihistamine. So there we go. Lots of you, because you were speaking about the relationship between mongoose, hornbills, and baboons and impala. Now you want to know a little bit more, Kerry and many others, about the relationship between warthogs and banded mongooses. I've never seen it in the wild. I've never seen them interact, but however, I have seen pictures and photos of them crawling all over warthogs and picking off the external parasites and the ticks around their ears, around their tails, and of course they get the sort of the added protection of against disease from the banded mongoose, because the banded mongoose pluck off the ticks. I wish I'd seen it, actually. I would love to see something like that. Imagine a warthog with mongoose crawling all over it. It would be utterly fascinating. Of course, we hardly ever see banded mongoose here, which is quite sad. They do occur here. There's a couple of them that we know of, but trying to get them on camera is generally an almost impossible task because they just run. They sprint off as soon as they see a vehicle. Look how sleepy this warthog is. This is utterly bizarre. You're quite happy there. I bet you this warthog weighs near on 100 kilograms, you know. It's absolutely massive. Look at that. He really is huge. It's hard for you to get a sense of scale, but I think he weighs close to 200 pounds. This is a seriously large pig. So not Gwen, but a warthog. In terms of relationships as well, just while I'm thinking about it, and symbiotic relationships, one of the other ones that you get while we sit at a den site like this, or at least an ex-den site, is between francolins and things like hyena, but especially wild dog. So when you have a den site, an active den site, the francolins will move around and clean up the muck that naturally gathers around any den, where you get any gathering of wild animals. So you see it with both francolin and with wild dogs, and the wild dogs tolerate them. Sometimes the puppies play a little bit with them, but other than that, there's no antagonism between the two species. So there's another relationship in the wild. And there are so many. I think that this morning we'll chat about quite a few. I'm going to leave our warthog to his lion. Let's go back to James and have a look at a fly that likes to thieve things.
Indeed, a fly that likes to thieve things, a robber fly. How very clever, Jamie. A robber fly, which is a predatory kind of a fly. It's about, well, let me put my finger next to it and you can see how big it is. There it is. It's not a small fly. Some of them give a nasty little nip, but this one I don't think is very enthused about that, and that's because it's not very warm yet. It's still quite chilly. So that's what this thing is. I don't know what this particular species of robber fly hunts, but whatever it is, it'd best watch out as the warmth of the day starts to build. And then over here, we have a very well disguised orthopterid, or grasshopper. You see it there, Craig? Or is it hidden now? There you go. So that's what's going on there. And then there are all sorts of other things going on this dead log. We can see that the termites have been very active here. So while there was a bark covering, what the termites have come and done, and you can see they've taken off the surface layer of the wood and taken it to wherever they are. So they bite it away, and they leave these sort of channels where they were walking. But they can't do that without the help of the bark on top of it, because they are so sun sensitive. They cannot be exposed to the sun, and obviously the bark also protects them from ants, or not ants, from birds and things that might like come to eat them. And then I spotted something over here that now seems to have disappeared. It was a tiny little thing, and actually I just caught the corner of my eye, but it's gone now. If you look over there, however, there is a tiny little silken hole, and I'm afraid I don't know what that is. There are lots and lots of little holes here, probably made by longhorn beetles, wood-boring beetles, but why that one should have silk in it, I don't know. Ants all over the place. There are ants everywhere. I reckon you'd probably find, I don't know, 100 species of little things on this tree if you looked carefully enough. I think that's quite amazing. Ants and termites and spiders and scorpions and flies and grasshoppers, all sorts of other things. Then Herbert found a garden orb-web spider caught in the middle of having its breakfast. Gee whiz, this is actually quite an impressive one. Look at this. Craig, I think you might get a better angle from the other side. Now, we've got a question about snakes from whom? Look at this. From Amit. Amit, you're wondering about snakes, and do we get them here? Absolutely, we get snakes here. I'll get back onto the snakes now. Let me just observe what's going on. That's the garden orb-web spider, Mrs. Garden orb-web over there. That's her sitting on the edge of the tree, and she's removed herself because she's a little bit nervous of us and what we want. Here's her husband. That's her husband over there. And then her meal are these beetles. And she's wrapped them all up. She's wrapped them all up in silk. And they're currently basically not self-digesting, but they're digesting inside their own exoskeletons. And she and her husband will now partake of what must be a real bounteous sort of harvest for the morning. 3 large beetles, all wrapped up in silk. I think that's a very, very good haul. All the same species of beetle, and I don't know which one it is. Isn't that fantastic? And someone else is going to benefit, of course, is this parasitic spider over here. Kleptoparasitic spider. And is living on the garden orb-web's web. Doesn't want to do its own feeding, so it will go and steal some of the food when this rather intimidating spider over here has given up. This Hoopoe really is quite something. Now, how much snakes we do get in abundance here, but you know, they try and stay away from us. They're quite nervous of being around us, and so we don't often see a great deal of them. We did see one snake skin today, but just carried on walking. Eric, you're wondering how big this thing is. Well, there's my thumb. So, I mean, they are quite large, but they are harmless to human beings. They might give you a little bit of a nip. I've never been bitten by one, though. Well, they're certainly not venomous. They couldn't harm you. What a wonderful web. Well, enjoy your breakfast, madam. I'm sorry to have disturbed you and sent you scuttling up into the tree here, but I hope you have a nice day. It's quite windy. Stay warm. Good, as you were. All right, let us move on from this position. Now, of course, it has been a quite sort of wet time around here, and interestingly, there's no dew on the ground, and that's because of this thick blanket of cloud. So our feet are staying wet, and hopefully Tristan's will too, where he is now.
All right, so unfortunately the tracks for the lions, we did find them, and they crossed very briefly into Djuma and then went northwards towards Buffalo's Hook and into that area where we can't traverse. So unfortunately the lions have gone that way. So we've now come towards Arathusa, and we're going to look around for any sign of potentially maybe shadow or tingana or any of those leopards that hang around here. So we just had a look at Red Dam. It was all very quiet at Red Dam. Weather's not conducive to animals wallowing or spending time at water. So I was hoping that there would be maybe a hippo in there, given that we've had a bit of rain and Red Dam is really quite full now. To be a perfect place for hippos to go. So I was just checking for that, and then any signs of birds, but unfortunately all quite quiet there. There was only a couple of hornbills giggling around the dam. So we shall forge onward. Let's see, we're going to just quickly check. There's another pan coming up called Knobthorn Pan, and it's a good area for buffalo, so it'll be worth having a little look and see if these buffalo maybe are here. I often like to lie. No sort of fresh signs of them though. There's no dung or tracks or anything like that, but they do sometimes like it here, so we're just going to have a little look around. Nope, nothing in the pan. There is a blacksmith lapwing. So there is a beautiful blacksmith blackwing, and you can hear why it's called a blacksmith lapwing. You hear the tick, tick, tick. So that is like the hitting of a blacksmith's hammer on anvil. That's why it's gotten that name. And it is in all likelihood calling like that because we've arrived here, so it could potentially have eggs that it's laid, and when they have their eggs they'll lay them on these open bare sections, and the eggs are really well camouflaged, and when big objects come anywhere near it they make a lot of noise like this to distract whatever is here. So us in this case, but if it was a predator like a jackal or a water monitor or a mongoose and they were coming close, then they call like that, and that draws the attention to them, and they can then lead that predator away and keep those eggs nice and safe. Now, typically this blacksmith lapwing always around water or near water. You very seldom would find them away from water. Alright, but we're going to carry on. So, Austin, you're wondering whether any of the animals are negatively affected. Oh, there's a kudu in front. Sorry, I'll get to your question now. There's just a nice kudu female that's just in the road there. Oh, and off she goes. I think she is busy listening to these blacksmith lapwings. Because they're making this call, they often do it if there's a potential predator around. So that's why she was just sitting and watching very carefully. And then when we've come up, she doesn't know if maybe there's a predator close to us, and that's why she's bounded off like that. But animals that would have been negatively affected by the cyclone, there would be quite a number of them. You would have found that a lot of birds that potentially were nesting at the time, and especially small ones that have small little cup nests, with that wind, often it breaks branches or will destroy the nest somewhat, and that then falls out and eggs get lost. There'll be lots of trees that would have been fallen over that would have been homes for a multitude of birds and lizards and small mammals like squirrels. So quite a few of them. The bigger animals not so much. You'll find that the bigger animals, and this particular storm was not too bad either. The wind and the rain wasn't too heavy, but you could find that the bigger animals would have also suffered maybe if they had young ones. So you can find times where, like Shadow, who likes to den in these pipes that are underneath the road for drainage, those will flood and will become very, very wet in there, and so she could potentially lose her cubs to that. So those are the kind of animals that would be affected by it. But this particular storm really wasn't strong enough to cause too much damage. I know in the 2000 floods and then again in 2012 there was quite a number of animals that got killed, and some of them even elephants. So I was down on the Sabi River and we had a fully grown elephant come rolling down the river, and unfortunately was dead by the time it came past. But it just shows you the power of the water. It obviously tried to cross and it fell, and then the power of the water just swept it downstream and it was just rolling, and it looked like it was a little cork bobbing on water. That's how powerful that water became. So when it rains like that, then yes, some of the animals can be very badly affected by the rain and the wind and stormy weather. But this particular storm, I suppose in Mozambique there would have been a few animals that would have been affected. I know there was quite a few people that were affected, and unfortunately some people even lost their lives. So, you know, if people are being affected by it, then you can be certain that wildlife will also be. But particularly it would have been birds that would have probably got hammered the most, and then also, like I say, things like squirrels and lizards and those kind of animals that can't move big distances and fast enough to get away. It would be interesting to know what's happening with Shadow. I don't think anybody's actually seen her or seen any sign of the cubs since James last had those cubs. So it would be quite interesting to know where she is and whether the cubs are doing all right after the storm. I hope they are. I'm sure they will be. I'm sure she would have moved them to higher ground and everything will be okay. So we're going to continue our search for Shadow or Tingana or any of those leopards in this area. And while we do that, let's go back to James and see what little creepy crawlies he can find on his walk.
We haven't found anything of particular note just yet, but we're walking along in relatively long grass. And if you look at Herbert walking away in that direction there, you can see the grass is roughly the height of his thighs pretty much. Herbie's a little bit taller than I am. I'm 5 feet and 8 inches tall. So it's not very long here, and he was just saying how at Cheetah Plains the grass will come up to your chest. You'll be walking through it kind of doing this sort of thing. And that's just because they've had more rain than we have had. Yes, there are areas there that have very different soil, but it's largely to do with water. And it's amazing to me that even with a vast sort of cloud bank like the one that was Cyclone Dineo, you've been talking about, even that resulted in highly localized rain around here, and we had 70 millimeters odd, just over 2 inches, and they had at least 100 in some places, and they're really not far away. They're, as the crow flies, 5 miles or so. Here we have the beginnings of a community nest spider's web, and I say the beginnings because it will be very, very much bigger eventually. It could be up to sort of that size. And in here will be little spiders, and let's see if we can encourage them to come out. Now, many of you, of course, would be utterly appalled at the thought of putting your hand into a nest full of little spiders. because you might be arachnophobic. So you just give it a bit of a shake like that, and sometimes they come out if they're still around. They might not still be around, they might have absconded for some reason. I don't see any coming out now, unfortunately. Come on. What happens if I was nice to eat? What normally happens is something will land here and start shaking around trying to escape, and they all come bustling out of the nest and then attack whatever it is has been caught. Just not today. They've eaten a number of... Oh, there's a grasshopper in there, a couple of termites. What is that actually? It looks like a grasshopper. Or a termite. No, it's a... looks like a termite actually. It's a termite that flew in here some time back and was devoured. It might be just a little bit cold for them to come out right now. And while it's not cold by sort of a human definition, it's quite cold for insects. And they'll be very, very sluggish at this time of the day. That's how we got that great picture of the robber fly earlier. It's just too cold for him to have flown away. The butterflies are slowly starting to get moving, and I've come across a couple of interesting ones, but they are almost impossible to catch on camera handheld. Here's an interesting ant. And this is a drop-tail ant. And it's called a drop-tail ant because, well, its tail is dropped. You get cocked tail ants and you get dropped tail ants, and this is the latter, and it's a jumper. Oh, and it will, I think they're predatory, so it'll be looking for other little things to devour, maybe aphids and that sort of thing that would be lurking around on the seeds of this now wilting Panicum maximum. And the panicum, of course, produces little sugary balls of water, and I think that could well be what the ant was after, because the balls of water, of course, will be attended by aphids. I did spot a grasshopper, but it has very cleverly hidden itself. Righty. Let's head across here. We're not too far from the den site here, or Philemon's cut line, so we're going to head back down there. I'm hoping there won't be a warthog in there, like there was with Jamie.
I hope there won't be a warthog there either. That would be terrible. It would be a serious surprise. It would also be quite funny, provided nobody got hurt. But I have had some really, truly, thoroughly entertaining moments. Brian, was it with you that we went on that bushwalk? And we stopped on the termite mound, and we knew there was a warthog inside, and it came launching itself out, and Brent flew. Probably, I don't think I've ever seen anyone jump so high. It was me, Steph was there. I'd gone along just for a walk. Brent was doing the actual bushwalk. It was before Herbie. I can't remember. It was hilarious though. It is not a fun surprise when all of a sudden a warthog comes shooting out of a hole. But fingers crossed there is a hyena, or a legion of hyenas. I've just come through to Chitwa. I just want to check on what's happening. So bear with me 1 second. Our morning station's in the east. Can I have an update on Tundi? Copy, copy, thank you. Oh, Brian. She's not here. I'm so sad. I'm so disappointed. Oh, I've turned that up too loud. That is really very sad. Well, we'll go to Chitwa Dam, although we might dip into Gremlin Hollow. Unfortunately, I heard an update that Tundi and her cub had been found, but I couldn't hear where exactly. And unfortunately, she is not within our Traverse area, so not somewhere we could go. I was so desperate to see that cub again. I find him the most hilarious looking little cub. Gorgeous, but utterly hilarious with his enormous ears. So I was really, really hoping to see him again, but unfortunately not. We'll have to make do with this Hornbill, Brian. Red-billed Hornbill sifting through the dung in order to get the termites and beetles that will be feeding upon it. They always look so prehistoric, don't they? Little velociraptors. I'm going to make my way towards Chitwa Dam, find out what is happening with the hippo, but it seems as though James is being unfaithful to Matilda.
I'm not so much being unfaithful as I am confused. Over here we have got a sawbacked flower mantid that is almost certainly the same species as Matilda, who lives outside the tent. Now, if you haven't seen Matilda, Matilda is an astounding mantis that made it through the cyclone on the same plant. So she sat on the same plant, managed to get through it all, and is remaining there. I actually saw her there yesterday evening, so she's fine. This one has got wings, though, and the one outside the tent does not. Now, I've read a little bit about some mantises having wings and some not. And in some species, only the males, I think, will have wings, or only the females, I forget which it is. And so this one is either a different sex from Matilda, so Matilda might in fact be Michael, or what we have here is a much older one. And maybe Matilda's just a younger instar that doesn't yet have her wings. But I don't know, so if anybody can shed some light on that, that would be fantastic. But just watch, this astounding creature will now follow. I mean, their eyes are exceptional for an insect. Watch, she's following this grass stalk that I'm putting around her, or him. Hello. And again on the Waltheria plant. A really fantastic example of the sawbacked flower mantid. And then over here, there's another dropped tail ant coming down this grass stalk, doing a huge amount of work on the grass stalks today, the dropped tail ants. And in the background I can hear the ground hornbills going, hoo-doo, hoo-doo-doo, hoo-doo, hoo-doo-doo, hoo-doo, hoo-doo-doo. In their mournful, sad way that they do at this time of the day, looking for others. What is this, Craig?